Hello, welcome to the Love Lexicon, where we look at all the words starting with A as they link to love. Love in a spiritual sense, which basically means awareness. Love as awareness, because love and awareness are one and the same thing, and they are the underlying force in this entire life. So, without further ado, first up is absence. Absence is a word that sort of exists in contrast with its opposite. So absence is the opposite of presence. Presence is when something is here. Absence is when it is not here or less here. This applies to love in the same way that it applies to light and darkness. Okay, so light is this force that exists, and in its absence we have the experience of darkness. Similarly, love is a force that exists, and in its absence we have a whole lot of feelings that feel like the opposite of love, but they're not actually the opposite. Love doesn't have an opposite. It's just like the things that fill the void that is left when love is not there. In the darkness, in the absence of love, we have fear, we have hate, we have sorrow, we have mental health issues, we have tension and stress. I'm rambling. Moving on. Next up is acceptance. Acceptance is a powerful attitude or approach to life that is itself loving. Acceptance is a necessary part of our ability to engage in the present moment. If we're unable to accept what's happening in our lives, then we are unable to see fully what's actually happening, and we're unable to respond appropriately. We've become, to the extent that we are not accepting of our experience, we become removed, and our behavior becomes desynchronized in a way. Next up is action. Doing things. Now, how does action link to love? We do things all the time, and to the extent that our actions or our behavior are harmonious and loving, then they are loving. Wow. When action is loving, it's also it's volitional. We have the ability to choose our behavior. Quite often when our behavior or when our actions are unloving, they are automatic responses. It's not an action, but a reaction. Okay, so action is when we have the choice. And in that choice, we can choose to act lovingly. We can choose to be kind and caring and compassionate and to help our fellow people. Yeah. After action, we have actualization. Self-actualization is to become the most complete version of yourself. It's to be completely at ease and at peace with your own being, and so too naturally with the world around us. It's arguably the most honourable and ultimate goal of life and what we're meant to be doing with ourselves here, and it's rarely obtained. It's like a really, really big ask. It's something likely we won't get to, but it's worth striving towards. It is admirable, and it is loving, because it's to have an affinity with yourself, to recognize what your being wants and how your person can work in this world, and then to go for it, to work towards doing your thing as best you can. It's a banger. Next up is addiction. Now, addiction is a behavior that, or a habit that manifests itself when we are struggling to love our experience, when we're struggling to love ourselves and to be present in the here and now. There's some aspect of our experience that we are avoiding or trying to escape, and in doing that, we do that by overindulging in a behavior, normally to the point where it becomes really, really detrimental to our own well-being as well as to the well-being of others. It tends to have socially destructive consequences. And you can get, obviously there's like your drugs and alcohol that you can get addicted to, but there's also video games and social media. Like, there's a lot of options available to us, a lot of escapes possible, and it's a very, very serious and prevalent issue in modern society. And as always, the remedy is to work toward greater love, to recognize that we're engaging in addictive behavior that isn't loving, that isn't serving our person or the people around us, and it's actually because we're trying to get away from something else. We're trying to avoid responsibility or traumatic past experiences. There's always something we're trying to escape from when we're over-engaging in these addictive behaviors. So that's a nice heavy one for you. That's something we experience when there's a lack of love in our lives. In an absence of love, that's when addiction tends to manifest itself. And it's a tough time, and it's addictive, wouldn't you know it? We can get really, really stuck in these behavior habits, and the habits form momentum, and it's really, really tricky to break this cycle of addiction, to establish new behaviors and to create positive change. It's a tough thing, and it takes a lot of work. There's marvelous support programs that are available to people for a full spectrum of addictive behaviors. A 12-step program, banger way of adjusting your behavior and moving toward greater love. Next we have advertisements. I despise advertisements. It's one of my least favorite things about the modern world. Back when I was alive in the 1700s, no ads, easy peasy. Yeah, also have disease and famine, you know. Anyway, ads. So the reason I don't like ads is because of the implied message that they all communicate to you. We're exposed to, I think it's between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements daily. That's how many times you're getting this message, this singular message from lots of different channels, but they're all saying the same thing. They're saying your life is inadequate and you need this product to be acceptable. And they're also saying that your role, your identity in this world is a consumer. Your job is to exchange your time for money, and then exchange your money for goods and services. That's who you are. No, my goodness. It's an offensive, reductive, just like, did I have a word for this? Yeah, it's an offensive diminishment of this amazing being that you are, and it just sucks. It's a part of this world, and I don't like it. Yeah, worth noting, because I find that it sends us a message that removes us from love, that takes us away from being able to see ourselves for who we are, and being able to connect with our world, because it's sending that subliminal message 4,000 to 10,000 times a day. It's saying, you're not good enough. That sucks. No fun. Next up is agency. Agency is our ability to choose our own behavior. Before I mentioned action versus reaction, which is those two demonstrate differing levels of agency. So reactions are behaviors that we engage in that we don't feel like we have a choice in. They're these automatic responses, and we feel like we're not able to choose how we do things, or who we become, or how we spend our time during our day. If we feel behavior feels forced. When we do have agency, when we have the feeling that we do have agency, we're able to choose our behavior. We're able to choose who we hang out with, how we spend our time, what kind of person we're going to become. A feeling of greater agency, it is an expression of love. It's to give your own person the power to do their thing. And it's a nasty feeling to get stuck in when we feel like we don't have agency, but in truth we do. We always have a choice. And the choice is very often a choice to act with greater love, or to withdraw from our current experience, to open up to the world, or to close ourselves off. And to allow ourselves greater agency, we must open up. That's the way to experience freedom. It's to see what's actually happening. It's to live with love and to be open to our current experience, whatever it may be. Through this openness, we experience greater agency via love. Alive. Did I keep alive on the list? I don't know. Alive. I put this in here because I find that you can sort of distinguish between being alive and living. So alive has this feeling of almost like passion, or just liveliness and vigor, or can't find the word. Tingles. To embrace our experience, to experience joy and to be on the tips of your toes and to be bouncing and to live, okay? To be alive. That's what it feels like when we have love in our lives. There's this spring in our step, and life just feels so different to what can be an otherwise entirely identical experience. But when faced without love, we're flat-footed and just going about our day. This huge difference that love can make in just breathing life into our person and our being. Alive. Yay. Who doesn't want to be alive? Oh, some people. That's sad. Allowance. This is very similar to accept. So to allow our experience is an act of love. It's a necessary approach to the present moment. If we go about our lives not allowing, also known as resisting, the current experience, if we resist, we are creating tension. We're creating this battle between what is and what we want to be. And in that tension, we create suffering. And our behavior is unharmonious. It's destructive. It's out of sync with the world. We have to allow our experience before we are able to create change. And in allowing it, we are able to see the world clearly, and we are so much more empowered, so much more able to create change. It's a confusing, it seems a counterintuitive step that we have to allow everything before, you have to allow it first. Altruism. Altruism is basically selfless deeds for others. It's loving in that it is looking past our own person, and it is seeking to meet the well-being needs of that which is not me. So it looks beyond the illusion of self and the importance of self, which is such a hindrance to our ability to love and our ability to live. When we get hung up on the self, we trip ourselves over, basically. But to act altruistically, which is to work for others, to be charitable, to be compassionate, without expecting something for the self in return, to act like this it's almost like a shortcut to it's like almost more like a boost. It gives the love in our lives a real kick, a real zap, a real pizzazz. Ambivalence. Ambivalence is a challenging and very common experience. Ambivalence is when we hold two conflicting ideas within ourselves. For example, I really want to get fit and have a healthy cardio system, but I can't stop eating bread and chocolate and watching Netflix. Those two things don't work together, okay? If I'm not going to exercise and I'm going to continue eating unhealthily, how am I going to get fit and be healthy? So ambivalence this ambivalence creates tension in our person because there's something we want and there's something we're doing and they don't work together. So to resolve ambivalence, basically something's got to give. Either give up on your hopes and dreams of becoming healthy or change your current behavior. Resolving ambivalence is loving. Recognizing ambivalence is loving. Angel. I just thought I'd chuck this one in here because I like the idea. I find that an angel is someone who acts with a tremendous amount of love. That is angelic behavior as far as I'm concerned. In that sense, I've come across a couple of angels in my time. There was a woman at the park who saved me and my cousin from the river, and then she nicked off. My auntie said she was an angel. From a Christian family, that's confusing, but in hindsight, you know what? I agree with her. She was an angel. Fun little tangential note, angel. Anxiety. Very, very common mental health challenge that many of us face. Anxiety is a preoccupation with the self in the future. So the mind is engaging in behaviors that are too heavily focused on me and what is going to happen. And in doing that, we are removed from everything that isn't me and also everything that is happening right now. So it's this really, really destructive, jarring detachment from the present moment. Anxious thought behavior is unloving. It's an inability to love. It's not a loving action. But again, to recognize anxiety, anxious thought behavior, that is loving. Fun. As always, there's going to be a real pattern here. A very strong way to resolve anxiety is to A, recognize the anxious thought behavior, and B, return to that which we've removed ourselves from. So return to that which is not the self. So instead of focusing so much on me, focus on everything else, everything that's happening in the present moment. Instead of being preoccupied with the future, be in the now. There are grounding techniques that are hugely helpful for this, just to connect with our senses and to feel what's happening in the body system right now. Hugely, hugely helpful for getting out of that anxious mindset. Apathy. Apathy is a doozy. Apathy is to not care. And I think that's fairly obvious in how it's not loving. So just to say, whatever, I don't give a toss, count me out, it is apathetic. And it's removing yourself from the equation. It's taking yourself out of the environment, saying, nah, whatever happens, I don't want none of it. It is unloving. It's not obvious how destructive it is, but it's, I was going to do Aragon. Let's not do Aragon. that's awkward. Awkward the word I wanted. Cringe. But Aragon's a gangster, so let's not. Why is he a gangster? Aragon self-actualized, arguably. He had this task put upon him, which he didn't want to meet initially, but he rose to the challenge and he took the crown and he saved Middle Earth. What an absolute gangster. Arrogance. Arrogance is not to be confused with confidence. It's a misplaced, or it's like a false self-love. It's an overinflated positive sense of self that's actually based on a poor sense of self. So while I'm saying that I'm greatest and I'm fantastic, what I'm actually saying beneath that is I'm insecure and I'm troubled and I don't think I'm good enough. And it's tricky to come across in the world because arrogance is sort of obnoxious. It can be very tricky to express love towards someone who is behaving with arrogance, but they need it just as much as anybody else does. They deserve love and they need love, arguably more than some. Articulate. Included here because, we're doing words, and I find that being able to articulate yourself and express yourself, it both solidifies your internal understanding and your internal knowledge, and it also helps you to connect with others, which is, in a sense, that's love within the self and it's love between people. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do here. So I want to be able to talk about these things, and I want to be able to share it with others. So, I'd like to be able to articulate myself. This is practice. Art. Art's the best. I played an instrument as a kid. I didn't realize that was art. I thought that was just something I had to do. Art is it's a very, very pure form of love in that it is an expression of self. It's letting something within our being flow out into our medium of choice, be it music or painting or interpretive dance. It's all art, and that flow from our internal state out into the world is tremendously beautiful. It's transformative, it's cathartic, it's really, really awesome stuff. And it has the effect of breaking down barriers with others. It can be tremendously connective. When folk see artistic expression, they feel themselves better able to express themselves, and they can also identify with what is being expressed through this artistic medium. Banger stuff. And as an extension of art, we have the arts, which is like the industry of all creative expression, and it's invaluable in our society. Like, the arts are so important and tragically underfunded and underrepresented. But it's good. It's necessary. We need art, and we need the arts. Asia. I included Asia here because I'm a white boy, and I've really enjoyed. I've gotten a lot from Asia, and from Asia's typical traditional understanding of how the world works. They have a different approach to life. In the West, we are individualistic. That is, we're focused on the self. In Eastern countries, in Asian countries, they are collectivist. So they focus on the group. They focus on the family or the country collectively. It's a different approach to life, and it's a different approach at a very foundational level. And because of this, they live remarkably differently. And on top of that, on top of collectivism, there's a bunch of other stuff that Asia's bang hot for. Taoism, Buddhism, meditation, yoga, chopsticks, rice, Tai Chi, acupuncture, yin yang. Like, there's some very profound knowledge in the Asian cultural system, and I do have a slight fear that we might lose some of that in this modern globalization, the modern culture that we have. I like Asia. Attachment. Now, attachment is a very significant type of behavior that we engage in, type of thought behavior that we engage in, that removes us from the present experience. So it's a hindrance of love, this attachment behavior. What attachment is basically holding on to something. Holding on to a current experience, holding on to an idea of how things should be, holding on to an idea of how the self should be, or of how things should play out. This attachment often exists in contrast to what is actually happening. So there's what we want, and there's what is. And the attachment creates a huge amount of tension. And the behavior that comes from these attachments is incongruent. It doesn't line up with what's actually happening in the world, creating further tension and further suffering and removing us from our ability to love. Attention. Attention is sort of like the spotlight of our awareness. So while our awareness is sort of our ability to know what's happening in the world, what's happening in the current moment, attention is it's like a spotlight. It's where we aim our awareness. So I could be paying attention to a camera, I could be paying attention to the trees outside, I can be paying attention to the teeny tiny little bit of dirt under my fingernail. Attention is where we direct our awareness. And it's interesting because the places that we habitually direct our awareness shape who we become. They shape our ability to love. They shape our person, our life, our experience. They shape reality for us. So if I choose to, for example, continuously direct my attention to my smartphone for 7 to 12 hours a day, this is all I'm interested in, this tiny little box in front of me, and I'm missing out on the world. And not only that, but I'm constantly being fed the ideas that come through the smartphone. This becomes me. I am my Instagram algorithm, for example. So to act with greater love in our attention, it simply means to be aware of where we're directing our awareness. as always, like, we can always move toward greater love. To simply recognize what we're doing, even if we're engaging in counterproductive or unhealthy habits. The first step is always to recognize this. And that step is a huge step of love. It's awareness. And from there, well, we can choose to be more loving, or we can choose to close ourselves off, as always. Attitude. Attitude is the approach we take to our lives. It's the ideas that we bring to any situation. So I can have an attitude of, for instance, optimism. We're going to be fine. Everything's going to be totally fine. A pessimistic approach, for instance, I'm going to this party. Everyone's going to think I'm stupid. The attitudes that we bring to a situation shape the way the situation unfolds. If I assume that everyone's going to think I'm stupid, I'm going to be defensive. My behavior is going to be tense. I'm not going to be at ease, and it's not going to invite connections with other people. I'm going to create that separation from myself and from others because of the attitude that I brought to the situation. Attitude shapes a lot. Attraction. We're attracted to things that are engaging. I think I wanted to say that folk who embody love are attractive. So yes, there's physical attraction and there's whatever things you're into, but when a person is themselves loving and they're able to behave with love when they come across other people, that's an attractive person. And we're going to be attracted to that kind of person. You've probably known someone like this in your life, someone who just is almost magnetic, and you want to be around them because it feels good. You know, you feel good about yourself. It's pleasant. That's attractive. To be loving is an attractive state, like across the board. Aversion. It's actually an attachment behavior. So when I said that we get attached to these ideas of how things should be, aversion is a negatively manifested attachment behavior. It's to see something in the world and say, no, I don't want this, go away. It's to not allow it. It's to not accept it. It's to create resistance between the mind and what's happening in the world. And it's unloving. Okay, it creates tension, it creates suffering. It's removing us from reality. Awakening. Awakening is the process of growing in love. Because that's what this all is. Like, love is a spiritual experience as far as I'm concerned. And to the extent that we are loving is to the extent that we are seeing the world truly. And that's what awakening is. It's a process of growing in our capacity to love, of growing in our capacity to experience life and to engage in life. And we're all in this process of awakening. As individuals and collectively, we are awakening. And it's cool and exciting stuff. Awareness. This is the big one. This is the guy. Awareness is love. That's essentially the entirety of what I want to say. Awareness and love are the same thing. So when we are aware of our experience, our internal or external experience, that distinction is not significant. When we are aware of our experience, we are loving it. So this awareness is specifically, it's a non-judgmental awareness. So what that means is it's allowing and it is accepting, and it isn't creating resistance between the mind and the experience. And in this non-judgmental awareness is love. We typically think that love is, romance. That's how we normally tend to see it, but that's just one way that love manifests itself in our lives. A very, very strong way, because it's between two people. It's something that we're really programmed to pay attention to, and it's a really, really strong connection. But love exists across the board. Anything that we come across in the world, anything that we are aware of, that we are fully aware of, that we are not resisting, what we're doing is we are loving it. And to grow in our awareness is to grow in our capacity to love. It is to awaken. It is to be grounded more and more in the present moment. it's to work toward self-actualization. It's all about love. This whole game, this whole life, it's all about love. And when we are more aware, this is the far out thing about it. When our awareness is greater, when our capacity for awareness is greater, when it is open and expanded, life is beautiful and harmonious and peaceful and blissful, and there is joy and there is deep, profound happiness, and there are connections with people and with the world. Life flows easily when we allow awareness to flow, when we allow ourselves to love our experience. It's a tremendous, liberating, beautiful thing. And yeah, I think that's what we're all working toward. There you go. That was the A of lots of words to do with love. Hope you had fun. Okay, bye.